you have to write while living. You cannot stop life and just write. That I've tried, doesn't work. One thing that I have found that has been very important is to have a daily small assignment without too much stress and small enough to not be susceptible to excuses.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. So, what if I told you that publishing poetry isn't alchemy, but architecture? Today on Authors on Mission, we're deconstructing the blueprint with Katerina Stoykova, a literary polymath who's crafted over a dozen poetry collections, translated award-winning anthologies, founded a press for starring in indie films, and now demystifies the poet's path in her new guide. From Bulgaria to Kentucky's literary trenches, she's engineered a career where verse meets verve. Katerina has many books out there, but today we will focus mainly on The Poet's Guide to Publishing and Between a Birdcage and a Birdhouse. So get ready for a wonderful episode. Katerina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for having me. And I just love this introduction and being called a literary polymath. That delights me to no end.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation.
Of course. Well, you definitely have the experience and the expertise to, earn that title. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation too, though. I think that what you have to offer here with publishing and poetry is perfect for today's audience. We're going to learn a bunch. So, I'm wondering, if we could just start off a little bit, getting to know you a bit. I understand you went from software engineering to poetry to publishing. So, I'm wondering if anything catalyzed this leap. Um, was there a certain event in your life that triggered your decision to transfer paths?
Yeah, it's been kind of like a scenic route type of thing. I started writing when I was 8 years old in Bulgarian. So I lived in Bulgaria till I was like 24 years old. And I wrote for most of my life, wrote poetry and in other genres. And when I immigrated to the United States, I somehow stopped writing. And I think that's because switched languages and countries, and maybe it's something to do with the food. I don't know. I had to switch everything. That's what happens when you
Right.
migrate. And then uh, during that drought, um, I did other things with my life. I um, worked as a software engineer. I worked as a project manager, requirements engineer. And until one day, 11 years in that writing pause, I wrote a poem again, very surprisingly to me. And I loved the experience, and I remember how good it felt. You're a writer, you know that it feels great to write something new, especially if you like it. And even if you don't like it, it feels like you kind of get back into contact with yourself. So at that point, I decided that I no longer want to be without that because
Mm.
it's important to me. And I decided that I need to find people like me, and I will do my part to be available for creativity, to be available to do my creative work. As you know, you can do your part, and the other part will come or not come, but your part is not optional.
Understood, right. So I can see how you kind of took a leading charge in that new role then.
Yes, yes. So after 11 years doing other things, I said that I'm going to figure out how to write again. And then I understood that I have to, first of all, I was starting to write in English all of a sudden, which was a surprise for me. And then I found out that I have to learn to write again, not only to just get that writing muscle again, but also I have to do it in a different language. So I had not only switched countries, but I had also switched poetic languages. I understood also that I'm going to have to throw away at least 1 year of writing, throw it away just to practice, to get up to speed. Because I read poems that I had written like in my early 20s, and they were a whole lot better than the poems I was writing in my mid 30s, right?
100%.
Yeah, so it's a kind of like a shock to the system. But once I made that decision to throw away, start over, throw away, start over, I think it was a very good decision because it also liberated me from, I don't know, you have to publish everything you write, or you have to write stuff that is usable, acceptable.
Right. No, I understand what you mean exactly. And that's a tip I always offer to any author looking for advice because you need to get through the messy parts before you find perfection. You need to find your right voice, the right vibe that, works best for you and the book that you're trying to get across. So I definitely understand that approach that you took.
Mhm.
But then, of course, you were able to come up with many, many, many pieces of poetry, beautiful works. So it all kind of fell into place for you, which is great. And here we are now with two books that we're talking about today. I'm wondering if we can start off with The Poet's Guide to Publishing. Um, I was searching through everything a bit, and you do describe instinct as the unconscious part of writing, technique as the conscious part. So I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit more about that and how you personally balance those two forces in your own poetry practice.
So I think that poetry has three parts to it. Writing poetry has three parts to it: instinct, technique, and obsession. Instinct, as you said, is the unconscious part of it, but also other people call it talent. Oh, here it is. I can write without reading. I can write about practicing. That to me, what happens with instinct is that you can make good choices, good initial choices. Of course, it needs to be edited. Of course, you need to sharpen your instinct. And I think that you sharpen your instinct by reading and reading various styles of poetry, and not only poetry, reading in various genres. That's how you build your instinct. And even those people who make very quick advances on the literary path, all of them, every single one of them, I guarantee will tell you that they started reading early or their parents read to them early and they have always loved reading and never stopped reading. People, great poets that I know say, I don't write every day, but I read every day. So reading practice is just as important as writing practice.
That's true.
The technique um, enables you to take your draft and to turn it into a well-made thing. Let's quote Emily Dickinson here, that a poem is a well-made thing. Uh, and I think that writing poetry is personal work for public consumption.
Mm.
It's deeply personal work normally. Even if you write historical persona poems, it still gets in through the personal. So in order to prepare it for public consumption, you need to really have control. You need to have control over how the reader will read it. when you pick up a book of prose, you have a paragraph. You read a paragraph. If you have a poetry book and you open to normally it's in lines, right?
Right.
So all these decisions about lineation, grammar, form, the various poetic devices, they are instructions, in a way, instructions to the reader uh, on how to read the poem.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a beautiful way of putting it for sure. It really does come from your heart and it is deeply personal, like you mentioned. So, yeah, I'm very happy to know that your book does elaborate on that. So, if anybody is interested in learning a little bit more, Poet's Guide to Publishing is a perfect way of honing in on the theory behind it and also some incredible facts. The book does talk a lot about obsession and inspiration, and you also classify them as a push and pull version of making poems. I'm wondering if you'd like to talk about that a little bit more. I mean, can you describe a poem that you wrote that either came to you as a push or one that was a pull?
Yeah. So let's say you walk down the street and then you get this jolt of electricity that is otherwise known as inspiration. As a writer, you know, something goes through your head that puts you on high alert. Does that how it happens to you, Danielle?
Sometimes, yeah, yeah, definitely. I think all the authors on this podcast could also relate.
Yeah, so basically, I have thought a lot because I had a long writing pause. I have thought a lot about inspiration and how to catch it. So I have two ways to recognize that. One is, I mean, you listen to the voices in your head and they all sound like you. How do you know? One is that it surprises you. It tells you something that you do not know. So if you hear something that you do not know, that to me means that it came from someplace else, either from a part of you that you're not constantly in contact with, or some other place, who knows, right? And the other sign that the voice in your head is poetry is that if you write that sentence, if you write those words, more will follow automatically. So the way that I describe it in my book is it's as if you have a current traveling through the ocean. Yes, it's the same water, but it has its own speed and it has its own temperature and its own current. So I believe that what I call push poems is that when you walk down the street or do something and then you have this jolt, and then if you do what I just said, if you write down the first line and then you just receive these poems that came almost out of nowhere. Or if that wakes you up in the middle of the night and you just write it down, then that, I believe, is a push poem. It surprises you. Now, the pull poem is poem that uh, you give yourself assignment to write, or somebody else gives you an assignment to write. So basically, the author pulls from whatever is in their head to create a well-made thing, right?
Understood.
Yeah. So you use technique.
Right. Yeah. So I can see the difference then. One is, if you're struck by inspiration, the other is if you have to come up with a topic and you pull from your knowledge. So I see that difference. I like that you have these theories and these tips, and it's great. It's great that you have them also very clearly outlined in the Poet's Guide to Publishing. Now, you mentioned before you actually do you have a copy of the book with you right now today?
Yeah,
There.
if you don't mind, I want to say why pull and push poems are useful to know
Oh,
and to
of
differentiate
course.
about. So why is that important for us to know? It's because when we normally sit down to arrange a book of poetry, we come up with a pile of push poems. And when we come up with a concept of the book, then we may need to write some pull poems. to round out the collection.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. It makes a lot of sense, and there is like a lot of importance behind knowing the distinction. It would help you craft it better. So,
Mhm.
um, so that being said, I'm wondering if you'd like to transition a little bit into your other book. If you'd like to chat a little bit about Between a Birdcage and a Birdhouse. I understand you also have a copy of that book with you today too. I'm wondering if you'd like to show that one off.
Yes,
There it is. It's a
absolutely.
beautiful
Yeah.
cover. What thought process went into the cover design right there? I'm assuming you had a big hand to play in that.
Oh, I have the pleasure of working with an amazing cover designer. I happen to have several more books of mine that
Mm,
the same cover
absolutely beautiful.
designer did. And so when University Press of Kentucky, who published Between a Birdcage and a Birdhouse, they said they loved my previous covers and they said, "Can we use the same
Mm,
cover designer?" Her name is Luba Haleva, brilliant, brilliant Bulgarian cover artist and book designer. So she read the book and she came up with several versions, but this one I totally love because if you look at it, you see kind of um, a creature that she came up with, a bird snail. So snail bird. So it's between snail and between
yes, yeah, I
bird.
see it.
And
I'm wondering what's the metaphor behind it. I guess,
also-
snails are known for being slow, birds are known for flying, so join them together.
it's also about home and
About home.
immigration. That's what the book is about. And it questions a lot about where you feel at home and how you feel at home. Also, there are a series of poems that mention birds and series of poems that mention snails. So, as you know, the snail walks with the house on its back,
Right.
and the bird can, fly and make a home wherever they want, right?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely noticed that as I was flipping through the book itself. I can see how you explore that idea in detail throughout the different poems. It's, I guess, what we're trying to get across here is it's not just a physical place. Home's not just a physical place, but more of an emotional place, an emotional state. It really resonates with me when, especially in the different poems you had. I can see how you really explore the tension between safety and confinement that, birdcage versus birdhouse really just captures as a great metaphor there.
Mhm.
So it's great that you were able to identify that through the different poems. I'm looking if you want to chat a little bit more about that metaphor and what exactly inspired this. Did it come from your experiences as an immigrant, being that it's about home?
Yeah, we said several times that writing poetry is a personal experience, um, and that's what pushes you to write something. I wanted to create a book about the immigrant experience and the in-between state, right? The word between, starts the title of the book. So the state of feeling not at home here and not at home there, and then thinking when you're here that you'll feel at home there, but that doesn't happen, and then just going in between. And then there is a poem that describes all this. If you want, I can try to read it.
Oh, please. I would love a poetry
Yeah,
reading. I always love that.
it is in two languages, and maybe I can first read it, and then we can discuss it if we have time. So it's in two languages. Okay. Imagine a raw egg. Още в черупката. The shell is whole. После я чупиш на две. You do that carefully so that the contents remain intact. Then you try pouring the egg into just one of its jagged cups. But now it no longer fits, so you must either leave some behind or never stop going back and forth. Така се усеща имиграцията. Представи си сурово яйце. still in its shell. Черупката е цяла. Then you break it in two. Правиш го внимателно, така че съдържанието да остане невредимо. После се опитваш да прелееш яйцето в само една от неговите назъбени чашки, но то вече не се побира, така че трябва или да изоставиш част от него, или да не спираш да го придвижваш напред-назад. This is what it feels like to immigrate.
That is absolutely beautiful. I love the metaphor of having to either always go back or leave some behind. That is absolutely just a powerful way of describing it for sure. It's either you, I guess, leave your roots behind or you continuously return to your roots. Is that sort of what you had in mind there?
Yeah, and also the sense of the constant motion, that
Right.
you need to move between the two places, and that's the only way to keep whole, because if you stay too long in one of them, you will lose something. When you move from one place to another and then you go back to visit or to do anything else, what you find out is that the place has moved on. And
Mm.
you go back and you expect to find the same situation, the same people, the same relationships.
But yeah, people are always growing, so I can see how it would be different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's gorgeous. And you also integrated that was some Bulgarian language woven in, correct?
That's right. So, yeah, I like to read in two languages because, it's a small country. Only 8 million people in the world speak the language. So, people have told me that it's delight for them to hear Bulgarian language.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely beautiful. I'm wondering, was it direct translation of the verse that came before it, or was it a different
Yeah,
type of phrase? It was then
yeah,
directly translated. Okay. Yeah,
that's
that's beautiful. I think that's a great way to weave in your culture and your roots, while also talking about the same theme too. It's a
right.
double layer there. So I'm wondering now, if the audience wants to get in touch and read more for themselves and get connected with you, what's the best way for them to get connected?
Uh, well, my updated website hopefully will launch within a month or two, but for now, it's great way to contact me via social media. I'm very findable on social media. And if your audience would like to look up my books, they are available through their publishers. Between a Birdcage and a Birdhouse is available through University Press of Kentucky, and The Poet's Guide to Publishing through McFarland Publishers. But of course, both of them are available on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to put the links to all of this in the description box of this podcast. So, everybody, if you're interested in checking it out, it's easy enough to do. Just go ahead and click the links. Now, I'm wondering, we always like to leave our audience with some writing tips and advice. I'm wondering what your best piece of advice would be for them to carry on with them after today's episode.
In different times of my life, I'll give you different answers to this question. And one thing that I have found that has been very important for me is to have a writing practice, to have a daily small assignment that I can do without too much stress and small enough to not be susceptible to excuses. So monthly creative goals have been very important for me, meaning every month I write down everything that I want to accomplish for that month, and I include the particular creative goal that I want to get done. For example, that could be second draft through a poetry manuscript or a short story, first draft of a short story, or write 100 words a day, or submit poems for 30 days in a row. So that would be my monthly goal. And I have to tell you that I craft those carefully because I see how they fit with my goals, other goals for that month, because life doesn't stop because you want to write something, and you have to write while living. You cannot stop life and just write. That I've tried, it doesn't work. So um, I assess what's going on and give myself a goal that I can do and that I can feel good about. So this is what I can offer your listeners, monthly creative goals.
I like that. You can't accomplish anything unless you give yourself a goal. It holds you accountable for meeting it and also gives yourself an outline for making sure you can reach that goal itself. So that's some great advice. And I like the journaling advice too. Every writer should be journaling. It's a great way to get out your creativity.
Mhm.
So this has been amazing. I really appreciate and value everything you shared with us today. I think that our listeners have gained a lot of advice for writing poems. And also, I mean, I was very touched by your poem reading as well. So it's been an incredible episode. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Danielle. Good luck with everything. I appreciate you, and I look forward to getting to know you better.
Of course. Yeah, that's the great thing about podcasts, always making new connections. So it's been wonderful. And to everybody listening, I think that we can all agree that Katerina really has armed poets with something better than inspiration. You're giving us a battle plan here with your books, and your experience from coding to stanzas, from Bulgaria to Kentucky. It's a very inspirational story. So again, everybody go ahead and check out The Poet's Guide to Publishing. And also check out Between a Birdcage and a Birdhouse, along with all of Katerina's other books. And for now, everybody, this is the Authors on Mission podcast, where we don't just admire authors, we reverse engineer their genius. So go build your masterpiece today. We'll see you next time, everybody.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or a leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.